about the history of South Africa. South Africa is one of the oldest civilizations in the world, founded 100,000 years ago. Under the civilization, and the first civilization to form was the Khoisan people, who were there 15,000 years ago. Then came the Bantu expansion in the 16th century, where the various Bantu groups, the Xhosa, the Zulu, formed expansion. During this time, Europeans were expanding throughout the world, and Batam tried to find a route to India. He eventually did through the Cape of Good Hope in 1488. But he was not really interested in settling South Africa, as it was a very mountainous terrain. And so afterwards, on April 6, 1652, the Dutch East India Company started Cape Town to extend trade to India. This led to an issue with slavery, because he couldn't find labor, so he expanded to Madagascar and Mauritius. And these slaves intermarried and formed the current colored population of South Africa. Then the British intervened in 1806, using anti-slavery as slavery excuse, and joined the Cape Colony. This led to the Dutch, now called the Boers, leaving the Cape Colony and settling in South Africa. This was a time when the Zulu Empire was also growing, and the Mifakani, or the Difakani as it's called, scattered various ethnic groups throughout the country. The Boers won on December 16, 1838 in Blood River, or the Battle of Nkame, after, well, it was a massacre really, not a battle, that's why it's called the Blood River. And they formed the County of Natal. The British, using anti-slavery as an excuse, but really because of the route to India, captured the territory. The Boers expanded and formed two independent border republics, the Orange Free State and the Transvaal. In 1867, diamonds were discovered on the border of Cape Colony, and British expanded territory. At the time, the British Empire tried to unite South Africa under a British flag, as it was done in Canada. The major obstacles were the Boers and the Zulus. The Boers won their freedom back in 1881 in the Battle of Majuba Hill, but the Zulus were defeated in the Anglo-Zulu War. Though I like to point out that the Zulus actually won the first battle against the British on January 29, 1879, in the Battle of Isalwana. Isalwana, by the way, in Zulu means little hand. In 1886, gold was discovered in the Transvaal on the Witwatersrand, which in Afrikaans means Ridge of White Waters. This led to the foundation of Johannesburg. Cecil Rhodes, who made his fortune in diamond mines in 1895, tried to implement regime change in the Jameson Raid in 1895. This failed, and Paul Kruger, president of Transvaal, declared war on Britain. The first phase of the Second Anglo-Boer War was like a conventional war, but the Boer Bitterinders used concentration camps to end the war in 1902. Eventually, the Union of South Africa was formed in 1910 with the two British colonies, Cape Colony, Natal, and two Boer colonies, and Orange Free State and Transvaal joined. No one knew where the capital should be, so they decided to split the branches of government into different legislative branches. Cape Town was legislative assembly. Bloemfontein was the judicial capital. Pretoria was the administrative capital. No one asked the main native African population about this, so in January 1912, the African National Congress was formed. In 1913, the Natives Land Act was passed declaring 87% land to whites. This, of course, led to protests, but during World War I, they were crushed. And so, after 1914, the diamond and gold mines was basically brought back to full capacity, and South Africa joined the Allies in World War II against Hitler, and of course they won. After World War II, the South Africa began to implement a policy of apartheid, which in Afrikaans means state of separation, with the Bantu Education Act, the Morality Act, Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act, and so on. The Morality Act being banning sex and marriage. And so this led to a civil disobedience campaign by the African National Congress under Nelson Mandela. And the treason trial in which the opposition was brutally suppressed. In 1970, after the massacre at Sharpeville, March 1st, 1960, that African National Congress was banned, and Nelson Mandela was then imprisonment in the Rivonia trial in 1964. In 1967, the Terrorism Act was passed, banning tactics of terrorism. In 1970, the Bantu Homelands Act, where blacks were forced to attend. In 1976, so the school children of Soweto were opposition to to use Afrikaans as a language of instruction. And so in the Sword Uprising, they protested. In 1918, a new constitution was formed, giving colored Indians and whites control, but not blacks. In 1985, as a direct result of African national policy and governability, South Africa then imposed a state of emergency and sanctions on President South Africa. And this led to the release of Nelson Mandela in 1990. And of course, began negotiations to end apartheid, and the first multi-elections were held in 1984, ending the rule of apartheid. Nelson Mandela's party, and after 1985, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was formed to escape violations under apartheid. In 1990, the second presidential elections held on Thabo Mbeki won. And in 2004, third elections were held. During this time period, there's a corruption scandal with Jacob Zuma of the arms trade, as well as later there was conflict of Jacob Zuma and Thabo Mbeki through seizing over the African National Congress. Jacob Zuma, from 2009, became president after a very contentious campaign. During this time period, there's a huge HIV/AIDS crisis, and a huge crime crisis, and a huge electricity crisis. But somehow, South Africa managed to host the World Cup in 2010 and became in position. In 2012, the African National Congress held 100 years of power, and in 2014, the fifth held in South Africa.